God's calling me to do something else. Like the fire service is my career, but it's not my identity, just like what you talk about. And my identity should be in Christ. And so my job, I think, is honestly just to love on these guys as long as I'm here.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the First Things First, a show where we talk about setting our priorities in the right order to help us fall in love with the job again and live out our God-given purpose. Today, I am so excited to have my brother and my friend, Tanner. He is from Texas. He is a Christian. He is a husband. He's a father. He is a podcast host, and I'm so excited to have him on the show today. So Tanner, welcome, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to do this. We had this scheduled for a couple weeks ago, and I, on purpose, delayed the recording of this podcast, and we're going to share about the reason why we pushed back a couple weeks. So,
Absolutely.
Before we get into that, so why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, about your upbringing, what family life was like for you?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Texas. I have never left. I'm a Texas boy through and through. Grew up in, I would say, a average-sized town in Northeast Texas. Have an older brother, and then we have kind of like an adopted brother, I guess, if you will, that's the same age as my older brother. Never officially adopted, but lived with us for a good bit. My parents are still married, and then they're actually raising my blood brother's oldest daughter. So when I was in high school, I actually had basically like a little sister around. She was about 1 or 2 years old. But yeah, I did not grow up going to church per se. I went on the holidays, so like Easter and Christmas kind of stuff. But my grandma tried to get me involved there. And then into high school, I got saved in probably fifth grade. And once I got into high school, I started kind of making my own commitment to go there. But I was involved in that. I worked at the church as a janitor. And then between that, football, and then leadership in high school, it seems like I was always around Christian people, so it kept me out of trouble. So I was a goody-goody kid. Whether that's for the right reasons or not, we'll get into. But yeah, and then I went to college at A&M, which is in College Station. If you're familiar with Teaks, it's based there as well. So I went and got my degree and then went to fire school there. And then got hired straight out of fire school to my first place. And so, yeah, that's kind of just the quick and dirty of it.
Nice, man. Good family story, good upbringing. Thank goodness for grandmas that pray for us and insist on taking us to church. So I had a prayer warrior of a grandmother, a grandfather. Family praying for us is always a good thing. So you talk about going to fire school and going to school for it. Did you always think about being a fireman? Were you the kid growing up with a fireman's hat and going to the firehouse visits and asking 1,000 questions? What was your fire department story?
So I actually did not grow up wanting to be a firefighter. I don't have any family that's in the fire service or police or even military. And as I said, kind of in high school, I was it was an organization called Leadership, which basically we did a lot of philanthropy and stuff. So we worked a lot with police and fire. If you've ever heard of like Shattered Dreams or things like that, like it's basically kind of, they do like a mock wreck scene and then have like funerals for students in high school and stuff. So it's all, I mean, it's fake, but it's like drama filled on purpose, I guess. So we do stuff like that. So we have a close connection with, law enforcement and first responders and stuff like that when we coordinate that stuff. And so probably about my junior year, I was doing the leadership stuff and just got close connections with fire and police guys. And one of my, I guess I have some mentors. They were both twins, and their brother-in-law was actually a firefighter for the town that I was in, and he was a captain. And so I asked him if I could do a ride along because I was kind of thinking about it. I wasn't really sure what it entailed. And so, yeah, he brought me into his station. I stayed with him for a day, ran the calls with him. And I was hooked, and I figured I was going to do it. But my mom hated it, and so she's like, "You're not going to be a firefighter. You're absolutely not supposed to do that." And I'm the golden child, if you will. So she was expecting me to I don't know, do something bigger and better. And so I went to A&M because that's where I wanted to go. And I knew they had the fire school, and honestly figured at some point in my college career that I would find another career path. And the firefighting would kind of be there if I didn't. And God followed through with it. He still wanted me to be a firefighter. So I ended up graduating early from A&M and then going straight into EMT school and then fire school there in College Station. So
That's cool, man. So straight from college into the firehouse with a mother who was not very happy. It sounds like a similar story, and I'm sure a story that many people out there have. So you joined the fire service. You're probably what, 20, early 20s?
yeah, I think it would have been right. Yeah, right at 2021, something like that. So
All right, so 20, 21 years old, joined the fire service. You don't really have anybody in your family that is a firefighter before. What is that experience like? What is your life in the fire service now as a guy? I'm assuming you're still living at home at this point.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I
you're
was still.
still living at home with mom and dad.
Yeah.
What is the fire service like for you at this point? What do you know about the fire service, and what do you find out about the fire service coming in?
Yeah, it was. I'll just say it was a rough transition. So fire school, at least with A&M, they have some that you can be like you're there, you sleep there and everything. But Teeks was not like that at the time. So that was more just like college with a little bit of sprinkling of firefight. Because you normally do your fire service day, like the actual fire training in the latter part of the class. So it's mostly just classroom stuff and all that. But then I started testing for some departments around my hometown in fire school. And like I said, so basically the first place that offered, they said, if you get all your certs, you're in. So within less than a month of graduating from fire school, I moved back home after that point, and living with my parents, and then got a job at it's a small department close to Louisiana actually, and they do the I think you were talking about the Nova schedule is what y'all call it. We call it a 9-day, so it was the 24 on 24 off for 5 days and then 4 days off. And so it was crazy because I had no expectations. I didn't know what a rookie year looked like. I mean, they talk a little bit about it in school, but it's a little bit more rough in person. And I wasn't used to the pranks. Like I said, I had no idea of firefighter culture, and so it was a shock to say the least. And the place that I was at, it tends to be a transition place because it's a smaller department. So normally they end up sending guys through paramedic, and then they'll go to one of the bigger departments. And so they are pretty rough on their guys because they want them to be good firefighters. They don't want to create a bad name for themselves when people do leave. Obviously they want to keep you, but they know the reality too, just being a smaller department. And so they're hard on you, man. They train you like crazy, and then they prank you like crazy. So it was, I remember coming home a couple shifts and crying and like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this is for me. This is one what God called me to do. I don't get it. And so it was a rough transition at first, especially just figuring out. I mean, that was my first real job. I mentioned, having a job in college, but that was part-time. I get to pick my schedule, and I worked with some of my best friends. So that was, it's not really the same. And you get to work with your best friends now in the fire service, but at the time it seemed like they were the big brother that picks on you all the time. So it was really good, but it was hard. You get those times that you question it. I managed to have some really good guys around that department, though, that really invested in me despite being hard on me. And they would build me up and taught me how to be a good firefighter. And that's what it's all about. And man, like I say, it was definitely a shock not coming from that culture at all and not recognizing what it was. But I wouldn't change it. And I was worried about it. We'll talk more about that in a little bit about the transition to the department I'm at now. But yeah, so I had no idea what to expect, and it was a little bit of a reality shock. So.
All right, so we got young Tanner coming out of the nest from mom and dad's wings, learning what real life is like. And at this point, you said you found some good mentors. Mm-hmm. And at this point in your life as well, that you start looking into to dating your wife and having building up your family. So what was that time like for you?
So the place I was at, they sent me through medic school. So that was after my rookie year. So there was about a year of medic school that basically that's all I could do. And then after that, I started exploring out more, like traveling and seeing some college friends because it had been about a year and a half, 2 years since college. And so I wasn't really looking at dating. Um, I mean, it was one of those things. If I find the right person, I'd gone on dates here and there, but uh, honestly, I enjoyed the single life. We have some family land, and so what I would do is on my 4 days, I would go up to the farm and just work on the farm. So I'd ride four-wheelers, hunt, fish, whatever I could do. So the single life was pretty nice, and I was a little I liked it a lot. So I was selfish in that sense, but I ended up going on 4th of July of I guess 2018. Went to I came to Houston to see a buddy of mine, and they were going to a family party, and that family had a daughter that was my age, and we just kind of hit it off there. We were talking a lot, and she was single, and but she lived in Houston. I say that it was Conroe, but it was like 3.5 hours away. So basically, I texted her after the party, and I was like, "Hey, like had a great time, but also, I live in Longview. Like, if you ever here, I'll show you around." But then I just left it at that, kind of the leaving the door open, but not really, because I didn't want to do a long distance relationship. And then she ended up actually burning her leg at one point with cooking oil, and like almost lost her leg, which is terrible. But that she used that as an excuse to slide into the DMs, and we started talking, and the rest is history, as they say. I asked her on a date. I took her to a Texas A&M football game, of course, and got her indoctrinated early, and then the rest is history. So we started dating. And with my schedule having the 4 days off, and then she was a manager, so she could pick her schedule. Basically, our whole dating life was going back and forth and just having as much fun as we could. So it was the single life without having to be single, because we were both young, without kids or anything, and we had our own jobs. So, and at the time, I was still living with my parents because they were out of the house a lot, and so we just blew money like crazy. We lived the rock star lifestyle, if you will. Which was awesome at the time, but yeah, so that's how we met, and then we ended up getting married in January of 2020. So if that sounds familiar, that's COVID time, and so right at our marriage, basically we went on our honeymoon, and as soon as we got back, everything started shutting down. So basically, the whole first year of our marriage was like isolation. So that leads more into the latter story, but yeah. So that's the dating life at that point.
So you go from somebody who is like you living your as you said, single life apart from each other, to like the world shut down, and now you have to be with each other for like 24/7 all the time. But I'm sure it was good to be with your wife, and it definitely changes because, as you said, COVID is everything was crazy back then, right? Nothing was normal for anybody. And as you're learning now to what it's like to be not only figuring out the world as what's going on, but also like figuring out what marriage is like. You shared a little bit that your parents, they're still married today, so you have a good picture of what a godly marriage is supposed to be like. You had grandma praying for you for years, so you spent a good amount of your early adolescence and as a young adult in church, so also what a marriage is supposed to be like. So what is marriage like for you in this crazy transition time?
Yeah, so it was wild. I mean, as you said, and as I said, like I was a firefighter when I met my wife, but the way it worked out, it's like we could live almost separate lives at that point as we were dating, because we were 3.5, 4 hours apart. And so the fire life and the dating life were very separate. So when we got married, she moved to Longview, and then the struggles almost started right away. She was like, "Man, this isn't what I thought it was," because like I said, we were doing the single life, but together, because we were, young and had all our money. But when she moved, She actually had to take a demotion in her job, and so she was home. She was in a new spot, having to find new friends, and then I was gone for most of the time because the way our schedule works. And so it was rough. It was a very hard transition for both of us. But then also, I guess with marriage, you find out, unfortunately, that I don't know, single life is very different than married life. You have to share everything, and you have to talk with your spouse, and you've got to. I mean, you're living life together, and it is a huge transition and something that I thought I was going to rock. Is one of those. I had a little bit of pride going in there. I'm like, I'm going to be the best husband, and it's going to be awesome. And it was not like that. So I unfortunately just I didn't lead well. We were going through struggles pretty quickly, and then like we said, right after we got married was COVID. So at that time, I could tell my wife wasn't going to be happy with being where we were at. And I had told her when we were dating, I'm like, hey, I'm not moving. Like, I'm staying where I'm at. And that changed pretty quickly. So, which it all ended up being a huge blessing. But I got my job, my current department, literally in March of, well, I guess April would have been my start date of 2020. So literally at that point, everything was shut down. And so they cut the hiring right after that. So we had to do a quick transition from moving from Longview to Conroe, and we ended up moving in with our parents because we didn't have a house yet, and I had to get there pretty quickly at that point. And then with COVID getting everything, her sister was their school shut down. She was in college, and so she moved in. So we had a full house, and then I was the only one that actually had what they call the essential job. And so I was the only one leaving the house at the time. And so they would be all holed up, and then I'd come back from work, and they wanted to know, what's the real life like? What's it like out there? And then on top of that, trying to figure out marriage while living with the in-laws, and then trying to figure out all that together with the stress of a new job. It led me to a lot of like anger and stuff like that. So there, me and my wife would get in a fight, and it's that you try to be really quiet because you're in the in-laws' house, and it would get to the point where I'd just literally drive off for hours at a time. And so we figured out pretty quickly, like, hey, this isn't going to work. And both of us, luckily, my wife's amazing. She's like, divorce is not an option, but I guess we're just going to be miserable. And so that's kind of how we looked into some counseling, and we looked into biblical resources, but churches were hard to find at that time too, because it was one of those, they were trying to figure out if they could meet without getting arrested and stuff like that. And so we were watching, online and stuff, but it was a hard transition. That's all I'll say. I mean, it was rough. And then, like I said, that transition from single life to married life brought a lot of sin out of my life, and kind of pointed out a lot of things that I had going wrong, that it was easy for me to, I guess, self-medicate, if you will. Like, I didn't do anything crazy, but my self-medication was just escape. And so, like I told you, I'd go and spend time at the farm. So I just didn't, avoidance is what it really was. And with marriage, you can't do that. You can't just run away. And so I figured that out pretty quickly, and we got into it pretty quick. I mean, we were, fighting early, but we were, luckily, both of us were willing to do counseling. I would say on my end, it was more so just because I knew that I didn't want to get a divorce. And so I'd kind of reluctantly go. But it was a rough transition, but we made it through. So we're here now.
Yeah, man, I'm obviously glad to hear that you and the wife are doing well today. You're happy, and you have kids now. You have two
Yep.
little ones, correct? So
Absolutely.
what is it like to bring two little ones in the middle of all this that is going on? And obviously there's a little bit more of the story of that. So why don't you fill in the gaps for
Yeah.
for us from the time you were with the parents to when the kids come, and to this transition to the new department.
Yeah. So, kind of picking up, we were still living with our parents. We found a house pretty quickly, and we got lucky. We got it in the COVID slump, if you will. So we didn't have to pay outrageous prices that they are now. So we moved into our own house, but then we were really isolated at that point. I had the department to go to every third day. We do a 24/48. So I'm a rookie. I've got to keep my head down, but also it's a weird time to be a rookie because we couldn't do like company training. So it was literally like it had to be specially approved. And so it was, I got close with my crew, but that's kind of it. It's like we can't go and see a whole lot of these other people. So half the department, I don't think I even met my rookie year. And the people that I did, it was like the main engine. So like the ladder company would come to the training field and we'd train together. So it was a very isolated view, if you will. And then on top of that, we run EMS calls. We just don't run ambulances, but we actually would stage for every call until the ambulance called us in. So it's like, my first year I laughed because we don't have a whole lot of medics in my department, but I think since I've been with my current department, I maybe started like 2 or 3 IVs, which is crazy because I was doing them 10 or 12 a shift. I used to, but and then like patient contacts were just really really there wasn't a whole lot that first year. It was, we only went on the really bad calls. So, CPR, stuff like that. And so that was just a weird time to be a rookie. There's a lot of pressure involved with being a rookie. You're trying to impress your people. You're trying to be good, keep your head down. And then on top of that, like I said, with the new wife, trying to keep her happy and then trying to figure out the new house stuff. I mean, just all these pressures on top of the pandemic. So it was one of those, I'd come home with pent up anger and stuff like that, and then just, throw it all on my wife. And, she was the recipient of that, unfortunately. We have this tendency to hurt the people we're closest to for some reason. And that was my story, man. So we found some counseling. We would kind of bounce around, we tried some EAPs and things like that. And it was kind of like a Band-Aid to a big trauma wound. A lot of them would just tell me, just practice your breathing and you're good to go. I was like, yeah, that's great. Let me figure that out. And so, it'd work for 3 or 4 months, and then I'd be back to, my pent up self, and just wasn't really prioritizing the mental health care and the counseling. It was just one of those reluctantly going. Luckily, after my rookie year, so, 21, 22, churches started opening up, and we both knew that we wanted to be more involved in church. But we had, before that, I guess we had bought a camper. And so our medication was traveling at that point. We traveled around Texas, just hitting all the state parks and stuff like that. But church was not a priority. And so, when my wife told me we were pregnant with our first kid, I kind of had this realization, like, I am not leading my family at all. I know that I should be. I mean, I have that history. I have the past with the church, so I know what it's supposed to look like. But I'm not doing that, not even in our own life right now. And so I kind of had this realization, like, all right, we need to buckle down and actually start going to church. So we started making Sundays a priority. If I wasn't at work, we're not going to miss church to be camping. As great as camping is, I'm not knocking it. We still do it. We still love it. But it's not a replacement for the church. And so we got really involved with the church at that time, and had a good small group and things like that. And it seemed like everything was on the up and up. And so we ended up having our first child, and the pregnancy was pretty good for the most part. And just really, like I said, it seemed like everything was going great. We had our daughter going to church there. She was being raised that way. And so she was singing all the Bible songs, all the stuff that I never really knew. And we're like, man, we got this figured out. And so we went into deciding to try to have our second child. And so our kids are 2.5 years apart. So Harper was about 2. We found out we were pregnant with our second child. And at that time, we had started, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it was it's called Re-Engage. So it's a marriage ministry. It's a church based out of Dallas, but it's a national program. And so it's like an intense marriage, 16-week study through marriage and the Bible and what God says about marriage. And we knew that would be an awesome thing for us, and we absolutely loved it. And then we also put my oldest daughter in the church we're at now has an academy for little kids. So, it's like all the way from 6 months to, I think, kindergarten. And so we had her at that church. My wife was getting involved with MomCo, if you know what that is. It's just a mom group, and it was at that church. And then we were doing Re-Engage at this church. And then on Sundays, we would go to our church. And so it seemed like we were kind of divided between the churches. and most of our time was spent at the other church. And we loved our old church, and there was nothing wrong with it, but we kind of prayed about it, and we're like, we'd rather be fully committed to one church than trying to do two churches. So we ended up making the transition to this church, which is First Baptist Conroe, and man, just loved it. It's a fantastic pastor. He pours into his congregation, and the community was amazing. And so at that point, we had decided we wanted to be the next semester to be facilitators for that re-engage group. And at that point, I will say, looking back, before I was not really a believer in the whole spiritual warfare stuff. And at that time, like I said, looking back, that's the only way I'd characterize it was spiritual warfare. It just seemed like the devil was attacking me and my wife in every aspect they could. You know, we had decided to go ahead and help facilitate. The night before we were supposed to do our first session, me and my wife got in one of the biggest fights we've ever had. And I called the leader and I was like, hey, like, we're not cut out for this. You got to find someone else. He's like, well, he said, I'll respect that. But he said, I would challenge you to try to do it. And they talked with us, that couple, and kind of built us back up and said, hey, you know, we don't expect perfect couples. We just expect real couples. And so that really helped. But then that whole semester, as leaders, I started going down this just rabbit hole of isolation. Despite having the community around me at the church, I wasn't utilizing it. My wife was getting very plugged in, and like I said, with the mom co and all that stuff in our small group. But I was just having, I don't know, I was having a hard time, and we were pregnant with our youngest at this time, and my wife was having some like OCD issues and stuff like that with the hormones. It was just wild. It was a much harder pregnancy. And so I would come home and she'd be like clean in the house. You know, it was like furniture flipped over, all this kind of stuff. And something about that set, you know, we talk about trauma now and it does something weird to your brain. It's something about it was not okay with me. And so I got to this point where this was like an every shift thing. When I'd come home, my house was torn up, and I don't know, I didn't want to be home. And so I wasn't talking to my wife at all about it. I was just kind of, you know, I'd blow up at her when we had fights and stuff like that. And then it was, we'd get a little bit better, but I was fairly quiet for the most part with it. And I wasn't telling her my struggle. And so at some point, I actually got to the point where I went out to my garage and broke down, and I just started Googling stuff. I was like, help for first responders. I don't know what I need. And I found this place. It's called After Action. So it's like a mental health and addiction counseling. It's based in California. And they have different programs. So they have like a 2-week program that they call a tune-up. And then they can do anywhere from like 30 to 60 days of like intense addiction rehab or mental rehab counseling. And so I called this guy, and I was like, man, he's like, what do you need? I was like, I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you. I said, you know, I don't want to be home. I know that's not a safe place to be. Work is my escape. And he's like, man, he said, yeah, I think this is the place for you. And so I went in and told my wife, and she freaked out because she is, at this point, we have a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, or a six-month pregnant wife, and I'm about to go away for 2 weeks. And so she freaked out, and then she's like, all right. She stepped back and she's like, okay, I didn't know it was this bad. Like, do what you need to do. So I go to this counseling and training, and it's intense counseling. It's an outpatient facility. So you're living in a house with other guys, and it's counseling, you know, pretty much 10 to 12 hours a day, and then peer support groups, things like that. And just really started getting to the root of some of the trauma from my past that I had been ignoring, and trying to figure out where this anger was coming from. And I went into that, unfortunately, thinking that it was going to be that quick fix that we all look for. So I was like, 2 weeks, one and done, we're going to be good. And it was awesome, no doubt. I love that team. They have a really great team there, and great counselors, great therapists, fantastic place. So if anyone's looking for it, it's great. It's worth it. But came home into the same environment that I had left. And so my wife, you know, had not been the recipient of all this same counseling. And I was at this point where I was trying to unpack these emotions. You know, at this point, anger was my only emotion, which, as we know, is anger is a secondary emotion, not a primary emotion. So I was skipping all these others. So coming back, I was trying to work on that. We were trying to set boundaries with our fighting. And it just, one night we got really heated, and we didn't pay attention to those boundaries. And I told her a couple of times, I was like, we need to stop. You know, I'm getting to a bad headspace. And then I would fight back. You know, it's one of those back and forth. And then there was a point that I hit that I was just like, I'm done. I don't have anything to do. I don't know what to do. And so I went and grabbed a gun, and I was about ready to end it. And my wife took the gun from my hand and stopped me, and then called my buddy. And I'm thankful for that. I hate that it got to that point, because neither of us at this point, I had never, I mean, really contemplated suicide or anything like that. And so this was kind of one of those, it was scary for both of us. It was traumatic for my wife having to deal with that, obviously. But she called a friend, and that was the first time I think that I admitted to someone other than my wife, like how deep the struggles were. And like I said, as bad as that night was, it was a revolutionary moment because, for one, it was getting all that weight off my shoulders. And, Galatians 6:2 talks about bearing each other's burdens. You know, I called my brother, not my physical brother, brother in Christ, and just tell, I didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to say, but I reached out to him and lightened that load a little bit. And then it was also the point where I realized, for so long I had been trying to do all this on my own, and that I needed God's help to get through this. So it's like I had been a Christian up to this point, but it was one of those half in, half out. And this was kind of that moment that kind of cut it, like, all right, like I got to give it all to him. I can't just give him the parts that I want. And so from that point, more intense counseling, obviously, with that. But we knew how important it was to find, as we find out, with this program that we went to this last week, having the good corner men. So finding good community, and just pouring into the people that I already knew were there. Like I said, luckily we were involved in the church. I just wasn't utilizing it, which was my own fault, my own sin. And so I let some people know what I was going through that were here. And since then, it's just been this incredible jump start to really just a life filled of saying yes to God and seeing what happens. Because like I said, before that, it was more this, you can have this, but not that little spot over there. And this was like full submission. And so we got re-involved with the marriage ministry and just really just getting plugged in, and I'm at this point now that, I'm leading a garage group for some guys, just in my church and community. And then my wife calls it a baby deacon. So I haven't been at the church long enough to be a deacon yet, but they have it's called a yoke fellow, and my wife calls it a baby deacon. And then just being involved, like having a personal relationship with my pastor and people around, and it's just been incredible. So it's one of those, I hate that it got to that point. But I want to share this story with people because you're not the only one. And I thought I was, and more so with all these people that I'm meeting, through the podcast world and through all these organizations that I'm learning about. It's, a lot of us have similar stories, and we need to start telling it because it's a lot more freeing that way. So,
Tanner, thank you, man. I appreciate you sharing that story. Really bearing your soul out there to share with others what you have gone through, and it sounds like a lot of the issues, a lot of the struggles that you went through didn't come from work. It was
right.
from home, with the learning how to be a husband, learning how to be a father, learning how to navigate what a transition from one department to another is. So a lot of the things that a lot of people, what we call normal people that don't have a fire department job deal with. But then obviously you also throw the fire department schedule, the lack of sleep, the stresses that we deal with on the call. And those are the things that then exacerbate our baseline of issues, if you want to call it that.
Absolutely.
And then we just don't know how to deal with that. And so I appreciate you sharing that, your story, sharing how that, can quite literally get out of control, even after going to get help, even after going to a 2-week resiliency training and trying to get the right tools to help you deal with those problems. But as you just mentioned, you just came back from a week at the Mighty Oaks Legacy program. So that is the reason why I wanted you to wait to be able to share your story. I myself went through Mighty Oaks, through the Mighty Oaks program. And for those of you that are just listening, watching, and don't know what it is, the Mighty Oaks program, the Mighty Oaks Foundation, is a foundation that serves veterans and first responders with faith-based peer resiliency training. They pay for everything. They pay for you to go out there. They're talking about flights, accommodations. There are 4 locations in the United States. There are a couple in Texas, Ohio, California, and Virginia. And they, as I said, they pay for everything for you to go there, and you put your name on a list, and they accommodate you to come to one of these what they call legacy weeks. And the cool thing is, as I said, for veterans and for first responders and spouses too. That's the other really cool part of that. If your spouse is, as you said, your spouse needs this training too. You came home from the previous program, and again, not saying that the program was a bad program, but you had the program, you had the help, you had the tools, but your wife didn't. So the cool thing about the Mighty Oaks program too is that they also offer those things to spouses. So can you share a little bit about Mighty Oaks? And one thing, you don't have to obviously share everything, because I think they also ask some for some for us to keep some aspects of the program not a secret, but people have to experience for themselves.
Right. Yeah.
But talk a little bit about the Mighty Oaks Foundation, the program, what the week like is there, and just how it blessed your life going through that program.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, that resiliency training that I got before, it was incredible, but it was not faith-based. So it was just counseling, intense counseling, and what I would call secular-based. So, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. If you need counseling, get it in whatever form you can. Obviously, we would encourage you to get faith-based counseling, but that's not an option for all people. So really, once I got back and once I got involved in my church, I was looking for faith-based resources for the mental health world. For one, it's just hard to find stuff when you want to look for it, I guess, if you don't know who to ask. And that was kind of my journey, was trying to figure out who to ask for that stuff. And oddly enough, I went to it was just like a mental health clinic for our local department, and Mighty Oaks had a table there. I'd never heard of them. And I kind of asked them, I was like, what's this? They're like, oh, it's a resiliency training for first responders and military. And so I think they had that flyer, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll have to look into this. And then the lady that was there said something that was like, oh yeah, and it's faith-based. And that like perked my ears. I was like, wait, what? And so I asked, and I was like, oh man, how much does this cost? Cause I know I have to do it. And then I asked her, and she's like, well, actually they pay for everything. And I was like, you're kidding. Like, there's no way. And so basically all you have to do, you got to go apply on their website, which is, I think it's Mighty Oaks Foundation. I have it pulled up here just so other people can get to it too, but I think it's just Mighty Oaks Foundation. Let's see, mightyoaksprograms.org. So there you go, if you need to sign up, because there is a wait list. At the time, like you said, they do some crisis intervention and things like that. So if you're in a crisis, they want to get you there quicker. At the point, I had what they call cornermen, and so I told them, I was stable, I'm good to go, but I do want to do this. And so I got put on a wait list. And basically what they do with that is, once they get the schedule for the next year, they'll let you pick a couple dates, and then you get to go. So like you said, they have locations in Texas, Ohio, Virginia, and then I went to the California location, which was a huge blessing. I can't speak for the other ones. I know the program's incredible. I'm sure the accommodations are as well. But if you can do the California one, go for it, because it was incredible. So, like I said, other than kind of doing some research online with what the program was, I knew it was faith-based, but I still had my hesitations. I've been in the church crowd for a while now, and, they have these men's retreats, and it's all about throwing axes and, making a knife and all this, you got to be man. And I'm like, that's great. There's a place for that, but that's not what I need right now. I need Jesus. And so I kind of went in with some hesitancy. I think looking back, I think one of the reasons that they pay for flights is because people tend to want to back out last minute. Satan likes to attack at that time. I mean, we heard plenty of stories from guys that were in my group that wouldn't have been there. They're like, man, if I would have paid for my ticket, I probably wouldn't have come. Like, there was other things that made it. So it's like one of those commitments. It's like, oh well, they paid for it, so I might as well at least show up for them. And man, am I glad that they did. The people that I met there were incredible. You know, I show up on this. It's a 26,000 acre ranch in California, and I'm in a room with a bunch of ex-military, firefighter, police, everything. You know, all under the sun, and it's a bunch of bros. And I'm like, oh man, this is exactly what I thought it was going to be. You know, it's just going to be a little bit of sprinkle of Jesus. And so, you know, my doubts like running through my mind, and I'm like, you know, I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to see what happens. And the first session, I mean, so it's 5 days, like you said, and they have sessions throughout the day. And one of the team leaders, got up to share his testimony, and you could just feel the Holy Spirit fill the room. I mean, you know, I kind of went in with this pride of like, you know, I've got this figured out, and I struggled with that throughout the week. I'm not gonna lie, just because I think that's what God's working in my heart right now, is trying to get me a little less prideful. And so, but man, the Holy Spirit filled that room, and you could see there's all walks of life. There's people that had no idea this was a faith-based program. There's people that, you know, their wives signed them up and basically said, "You're going, or we're getting a divorce." There, you know, there's all kinds, like there's every walk of life, and so that's what's cool about it. But what I was amazed by was just the staff, the team leaders were. I've never seen so much. I don't know how to say it. I don't want to say coordination because that sounds like it's manufactured, but they're all on the same page, if you will. And they are all there for our benefit, and they're there to serve God. And they make that extremely clear from the get-go. And that's just not something, at least for me, that I'm used to seeing in the first responder and military realm. I mean, I'm not a military person, but I know plenty of guys that are, and it's like, you know, it's that macho, bravado, manly man. And you see these team leaders that most of them are manly men, and they're breaking down their heart, and they're crying in front of these guys, and just pouring it out there. And they're really setting the tone. And I mean, that on top of the curriculum that they give for the resiliency training, I can't speak highly enough about it. I mean, I remember the first day I texted like 6 of my friends that I'm pretty close with, and I've started reaching outside of that circle. I'm like, hey, y'all got to go to this. Like, you need to sign up. Just do it. And like, it's incredible. So yeah, I mean, it's, like you said, I don't want to give away too much. It's not a secrecy standpoint. It's more so, and at A&M, we used to say, from the outside looking in, you can't understand it. And from the inside looking out, you can't explain it. And that's kind of the same idea here. It's like, it looks weird from the outside, but from the inside, you can't even explain the words. It's only 5 days, and I say only, and it felt like it's one of those, the days go fast, but the relationships that you build in that time are, like you said, lifelong. I mean, you're 3 or 4 years out, and you're still talking to those guys. You know, we've got our group text going. We're only, let's see, I guess we're 2 or 3 days out, so we're pretty fired up. But I think kind of the takeaways, they have these, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with them, but it's called the 4 B's. So this is what they preach. It's be in the Word, be in prayer, be in fellowship, and then be in contact with your cornermen. So breaking that down, obviously the Word is the Bible. Being in prayer is talking to God. And then fellowship, they encourage you to get in with a Bible preaching church, which that is something that is highly preached there, which is good. And if you don't have resources, they'll find them. Each session has a mentor that's his specific job, is to make sure that you're getting involved with a biblically preaching church, and just follow up. And then obviously be in contact with your cornermen. So it's really important. I think initially most of the guys, so you're in small groups at this. We had 28 guys total. And so we had groups of, I guess, 5, a couple groups. And so your 5 guys, those are kind of your cornermen as you walk out of the program. And then the hope is that you find people that are based around you. So you want to find guys that are close by. So you walk out with 5 guys that you know their story, you know their life, you know their struggles. And then the hope is to expand that and find that fellowship at home. And it's not that those guys can't be there, but it's just really important to find that at home too. So that's where I'm at right now. It's one of those, I've already got some guys in mind, and trying to bring that around and just trying to tell everybody I can about this program. So.
Tanner, I love it, brother. When I heard that you're going there, I was so excited for you, and so excited for what God is did and is still going to do in your life through that program, through those relationships. And I want to encourage everybody who's watching or listening. And I'll add the link on the description of the show. You have to take advantage of this program, the Mighty Oaks Foundation. It's an amazing program. And if you don't know who the founder of this program, Chad Robichaud, look him up. The guy is a badass. There's no other word to describe him. You know, he's a Marine Recon. I think he did 9 tours, and he went back and saved his translator when the whole evacuation of Afghanistan was going on. The guy's an MMA fighter. His story as well is an amazing story. And as Tanner was sharing, man, there's a lot of stories of the guys that go through this program. And it's not just for guys too. They have female programs as well. And as I said, in spouses programs. And it's such a great program that has impacted my life tremendously. I share about it a little bit in the book. And man, I'm excited to see what God's going to do in your life through it. And again, I encourage everybody who's listening in to take the opportunity. If anything, as Tanner said, to have the opportunity to go to Sky Rose and eat a steak that was cooked by Kenny is amazing. Kenny is him and his family cook for the guys and girls that are there. It's an amazing family. They bless everybody that goes through the program, and it's such an amazing week. You get to sleep in yurts. It's a really cool experience. It's an amazing place to just find solitude as well, and just spend some time with God and grow and hear from other people that are going through the same struggles that we go through. And as you said, sometimes we think that what I'm going through is just my problems. There's nobody else out there that is experiencing. And when you sit down on those small groups on the couch across from other guys that are sharing the same stories, you know, I feel like a lot of times when I have somebody on the podcast and they're sharing their stories, and it's just like, man, that's my. I'm sure I have said it time and time again. Man, that's my story. Man, that's the same thing. Oh, I've thought about that. Oh, I've been through that. And our struggles. I have a friend that says our stories are different, but the trauma is pretty much the same. And it's true. Some of the things that we go through are very similar. Our stories are just a little bit different. And so now you get a chance to go through these programs, and just as last week you went through the Mighty Oaks Foundation Legacy Week. There was a point there for you in the previous program that you felt a little tug to do something different in the fire service. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I think a lot of, you were talking about the trauma and stuff. So in the same, just to go back, like, a lot of my trauma wasn't from work. I say that I think as firefighters and police and stuff like that, we actually do pretty good with trauma on the job. There's always that one call that'll get us or something, but that was my biggest struggle. Was like, I was like, my life looks perfect. Work's not that bad. So no one wants to hear my struggles. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. That's just a lie from Satan. And so that's kind of been this process of opening up. So like going from that other program and going into the legacy program, really it's just wanting to share, not that my story is anything special. Like I said, I think it's more familiar than we think. But I feel like God has been calling me to, step up and step out and tell my story. Like I said, not for my glory, but for his. And, if it helps one person, that's what it's all about. And so really, I'm in the process now. So, I mean, this is a year or so from the first place, and then now coming out of Mighty Oaks, just with a whole new fire, and just getting to see what it looks like to actually have men that are in the fire service, in the police, in the military that are following Christ. Because sometimes that's like a dichotomy. It's like you can't do both. And that's kind of what I thought. I was like, I'm just going to keep quiet. And now I'm like, no, like absolutely, God's got me, and I'm going to go all out for him. And so what this has turned into is trying to create a peer support team for my department, as well as starting this podcast. And so, like I say, it's not one of those, I don't like to hear myself talk, and I'm nervous. If you meet me in person, I'm a pretty quiet guy, but I feel like God's been tugging on my heart with this. And so it's one of those, out of obediency, just trying to be a resource for people. I got lucky enough to find programs like yours and like Faith in the Firehouse and some of those other guys, Forged in Darkness, stuff like that, and started hearing some of these stories. And I'm like, where was this? Because I thought I was alone. And that's what's amazing about the internet these days, as bad as it is. It's also a great gift that if some guy happens to stumble on my page and hear it and say like, man, that's my story, and then decides to start following Jesus because of that, or even just gets encouraged to, like he's been a follower and just needs that little bit of a push. That's what it's all about, man. And that's what I'm trying to do with my department as well. So it's like, the peer support stuff has been around a while. We don't have one for our department. So like I said, I'm trying to start that up and trying to navigate that through, trying to keep everybody happy, admin, the union, and then the fellowship as well. And so it's interesting, but we're in the early stages of that. But like I said, I instead of just waiting to see that come to fruition, I felt like this podcast was a great opportunity to start teaching the lessons that God was teaching me. And I speak not from, I guess, authority per se. It's more so I'm going through these struggles as well. And you're not alone. And so that's kind of been the drive behind the dad shift. And like I say, so it's, I've been able to, through the re-engage and stuff like that, we share our marriage testimony. And we had a really good response last time we did that because it was the first time we shared it. And people were like, man, like that was an incredible story. And then had some encouragement. I have the buddy that I called the night that I was going to end it all actually has his own podcast. And so I shared my testimony on there and just had people reaching out like, man, you should start a podcast. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is crazy. And so it just seemed like God was pushing something. And I'm like, no, I don't need to do that. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then one day I was like, you know what? Let's just see what happens. And so that's where I'm at. It's one of those, I don't know where God's going to lead it. Doesn't matter if there's 2,000 listeners or two. The point is to be obedient to Christ, and that's what I'm trying to do. So,
I love it, brother. I love your story. I love your heart. I love what you're trying to do, obviously in your home. I love what you're trying to do in your department, and obviously for the fire service as a whole. So, let's start closing out. I have some rapid fire questions for you.
yeah.
They're not really rapid fire. You can take as long or as short as you want with them. And so if you're ready, here we go.
Let's do it.
So share with us what was like the first time you set foot in the firehouse.
Man, terrified, but also cool. So I told you the first time I got to do it was when I did that ride along. So I actually got to ride on the ambulance. I didn't get to ride on the truck, but I still loved it because I got to help people and shout out. I think he's already gotten a shout out on your podcast, but his name's Ryan Howard. He's an awesome dude. He works for Longview. He's a captain. He's a Christ follower. He's an awesome dude. And he's kind of been one of those guys that when I have questions, I text him. And so he's a good guy. And he just really set a good precedence with that. Told me what it was about and took me into their house, and the firehouse is a home. And they invited me in, and I fell in love with it ever since. So.
Right. So what was your first fire like? Tell us that tale.
Oh man, terrifying. In fire school they do that, and it's all Teeks has a pretty good burn building and stuff like that. But it was one of those, I remember walking in and my captain's behind me, and we walk into this house. It's banked down smoke and everything. And so I'm like kind of crawling, kind of walking, because at this point the captains are walking. They're not crawling. They're like, no, I got this. And I'm a new guy, so I'm like in the middle. I'm like, they told me to crawl in fire school. I don't know what to do, and then so he's got the tick, which I had no idea at this point. We like my department now. We have ticks on our air packs and everything, but I had nothing, and so it's blacked out smoke. And I find myself trapped in a closet, and this guy's just laughing at me the whole time because everybody's out of the house. So it's like, it's one of those, they knew where the fire was. We just have to take the hose, but I got trapped in the closet and I couldn't find my way out. And he's yelling at me. He's like, just get out right there. I'm like, what are you talking about? I can't see anything. And he's got the tick, so he sees everything. And so it was just, it was funny. It was get trapped in a closet on my first fire. So.
All right. That's good, man. Last question is, what do you feel like your purpose and your calling in the fire service is?
In high school, I felt God was calling me to the fire service to be a light at that time I was really involved in my faith, and I felt like God was calling me to that for some reason. Like, it's a dark place. I had talked to a lot of firefighters, saw the divorce rates and things like that in the fire service, and really felt like God was calling me there to just be a light. Fast forward into going into my rookie year, my first place. That was the first thing I dropped, unfortunately. I still kept my faith quietly, but I wasn't definitely going to talk to these guys about it. I was trying to be the cool guy. And that led into my second department. Just kind of, my faith was on the back burner. And so through this process, I think it's been humbling, and also just apparent that God's calling me to do something else. Like, the fire service is my career, but it's not my identity, just like what you talk about. And my identity should be in Christ. And so my job, I think, is honestly just to love on these guys as long as I'm here. I came to the point this last year that if God calls me out of the fire service, then I'm going to answer. It's a yes. Whatever you need, I'm willing to give up whatever it takes. And so for now, he's blessed me with the opportunity to keep this job. And so I'm going to try to do everything I can for him. And that, like I said, that right now, that looks like just texting guys. So like I said, the peer support is something that's growing, but I don't have to have anything official to start that now. So it's one of those, we have a lot of guys on baby leave or guys that are hurt or things like that. And it's just texting and be like, hey man, what do you need from me? And what can I do for you? How can I pray for you? And so I just really think that's where he has me right now. It's one of those, just trying to reach out and be a light in a dark world. So, yeah.
That's awesome, man. It's John 1:5 is one of my favorite verse. It's the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome. And one of the quotes that Chief Starn says, that he works in the darkness. He's a guy who teaches with a tick, but he also likes to be a light in the world in the fire service. Yeah. So I couldn't agree more with you. And Tanner, I'm so thankful that you came and you shared your story, and that you spent some time with me and with everybody listening. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, to talk to you, perhaps ask some more of your story, or just share with you their story, where can they listen to your podcast?
Right now, I've got it on Spotify and YouTube. That's kind of the main ones. You just type in The Dad Shift. On Instagram, I think it's the.dad.shift. And then YouTube, it's just the-dad-shift. But if you want to email, you can email me. It's thedadshifttexas@gmail.com. I'm willing to talk to anybody. Like I said, I want to share my story. If you want resources, like I said, so that After Action, Mighty Oaks, whatever it is, if I have it, I'll give it to you. I mean, that's kind of my idea, is just trying to compile resources as well, and shows like this and things like that. So I encourage people to reach out. I love to talk, and I'd love to hear your story as well and share it on my page. So that's what we need to do. We need to share what Christ is doing in our lives, and we don't do enough of that. So,
amen, brother. Amen. That's awesome. Well, everybody, once again, this has been a great opportunity that I have had to chat with my brother Tanner Carroll. Go check out his stuff on Instagram, on YouTube, The Dad Shift. If you like this show, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe, share. And don't forget to keep the first things first, and we'll see you guys next time.
Absolutely.